Welcome to today's episode of Crafting with Kim. I'm Kim Parkinson, and today I'm going to show you how to make 3 quick and easy cards. We're going to be using alcohol inks, die cutting, different types of watercolor, and embossing powders. These 3 cards are only going to take you about 10 minutes each to make. Join me now. Now we'll get started on this week's project. Today we're going to make 3 different cards, and we're going to start off with this one right here with the butterflies. This card here requires a couple of different types of techniques. One of the techniques we're going to do is using an embossing folder with some embossing ink, embossing powder, and one interesting thing, a embossing machine, a tool like this. So this one here, the first thing that we need to do is actually take our paper. This is watercolor paper that we're using today for the last technique. There's a couple of them on here. And we're going to just take this embossing ink pad, and on the part of the embossing folder, if you see, I don't know if you can see this, let's see if we can get up close. One of the side is raised one way, and the other side is raised another. And so this one has a lot more surface area on it, and this is the side that we're going to ink up. Okay, so we're just going to take our ink pad and write directly, flipping that around just to make it easier for myself, write directly onto that. I'm just giving nice pressure. Now, one thing to note about these ink pads is that they're not what you would call super juicy. So if I flip this over, if I press into this, see there's no juice coming out of it. It's just, it's nice and wet, but it's not gooey, which is exactly what you want. And this is a clear ink pad, and it's used specifically for embossing. So that's what we're going to be using on our watercolor paper today. So now that this is completely inked up, it is plastic, so it's going to stay wet for a good amount of time as well. I'm going to put our watercolor paper right inside, close that up, and I'm going to just hold it because I don't want that to move anywhere. I'm going to take our Sizzix machine, which is going to be what gives the pressure to actually emboss this. And I need another plate. Put this one down first, put this on top, and another one. And this is what they call a sandwich for these type machines. So we have this, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to roll that through the machine. You can see it's just got a little bit of pressure because this is lifting right here, just a little bit. And I'm going to go backwards with that. You don't have to. I just like to do it. And now I have my done with my machine for now. And here's my bottom plate that I no longer need at the moment. And these 2 plates. 1 I don't need, 2 I don't need, but here is our finished product. And you can see it's got some embossing on there because it's pressed so much that it's actually conformed the paper to the plastic folder. So I'm going to just take another sheet of paper, put that underneath, and this is only because I'm taking the embossing powder. I'm going to go ahead and lay that right on top, and I want to catch all of the extra embossing powder. There's no waste for embossing, which is excellent. It's a great technique. So you can see here I've got this, and I've covered that completely, but I'm not worried about it because I'm going to shake it. I'm going to shake it the other way, make sure I get every nook and cranny. I'm going to tap it off, and you can see I've got quite a bit on there and in between all those little pieces. And if I show you the finished product again, see all that gold that you see in there? That's what we're creating today. So I'm going to flip that over, just give it a little tap. I got some extras right there. And as long as you have this, this here, what we're going to do after it's done is we're just going to take this and pour it right back in the jar. And like I said, there's so little bit that's used each time. So these little jars go a long way. So now that I have this like this, we are going to need to heat it in order to get it to be set. Because if I touched it right now, it would just fall right off. But if we heat it with the heat gun, which I know is a little noisy, I'm going to stand back just a little bit so you can see. And if I can hold it right there, you can start to see the magic happen. Hopefully you can get a nice close-up and see how that just starts to move and everything just kind of congeals and melts, and you just get a nice look to this when it's finished. You can see the difference there. So So I'm just gonna put this one, not gonna finish this one because I do have one already pre-done, but if you can see the difference here before I finish, this side here is done. You can get a nice little shine to it. And this side here is still all powder. So, and at any time, even though I'm not gonna finish this one now, at any time I can go back and I can heat this. And as long as the powder is still on there, you can heat it and it will stay on there, which is kind of cool. But I have already got one pre-done, all done right here, the magic of television. And now we're going to be working on our burst of color. So you can see the difference between here. Need some color added onto that, even though it's really beautiful like this. Now, if you used this in, say, like a wedding card or and some elegant confirmation or something like that, it would be stunning just because of all the colors that are on there right now. That nice cream and gold pearly color. But today we are going to color it up because we're making a nice fun card with a butterfly. It was actually, this butterfly card could be great for anything. Welcome home, glad to see you, get well soon, even a sympathy card. So. Then we have just here what we call color bursts, and these are just highly pigmented product. And you're just gonna go ahead and tap some of that color on. It doesn't make any difference where. As you can see, there's just a little bit of like what looks like granules that come out. There's not really much on there. And I'm going to choose to use colors that will blend together nicely. I'm not gonna choose a yellow now that I've done purple because yellow and purple make mud, a nice brown color, and we don't want that. But I will choose like a little bit of a red because red and blue actually make purple. So I'm just tapping the color on here, there, and everywhere. And now that I have a couple of colors on, I'm going to use some water, and now you'll see all the magic start to happen. Isn't that cool? And now because you've already embossed it with the embossing powder, all that raised area that you see there, that is from the embossing, all that embossing powder that you used, and it's going to take on the look of the original, which is dry embossing with the folder. So you can let it sit, or you can add more water, you can do whatever you'd like to it. In this particular case here, for essence of time, I'm going to take some paper towels. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to let that sit for a moment, and then I'm going to just start blotting that up just a little bit. And now if you move your paper towel as you blot, what's great is that you can actually get the different areas of the color there. Let me see, you can see there's the different colors coming through. I'm going to use a different paper towel, just so I can make sure that I get the different purples. It's okay if they blend. You can see there's a little red poking through here and there. It's okay if they blend. You can actually blend the whole thing. You could just mishmash the whole thing up. As you can see, the colors on my original are totally different than the colors on my new one. But that's the beauty of it. It's individual, and you're gonna make great art no matter what. So now that I've completely colored that, and I have just gone ahead and tapped all the color off, what I'm going to do is just clean up my little area here because I just don't want it to get onto the card. Simple and easy. There we go. And you could, if you didn't like how bright this was, you could certainly add more water to this and lighten this. That's the beauty of it. So this one here is definitely a little bit lighter in some spots, but that's up to you. Whether or not you want to do the lightness or the darkness, that's up to you. And it's all done by water because of the pigments in that. So I'm going to now finish off this card with just a couple of added features here. We have our card base, which is nice and simple, where it's a A2 size card, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I'm just going to go ahead and take this and flip it over and get my tape, my adhesive. I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit of adhesive to the corners. You don't have to add a ton. And you're going to add that right on top. And now you have these little pieces, and we're just adding some accent pieces. So let's see if I can get a couple of those down here, here, and maybe one in the middle. And the last little bit, I've got some other accent pieces, but what I'll do is I'll move on to the little butterfly here. So the last little butterfly we cut out using a die. I do have a die that I'm going to show you in just a moment too, but this particular one we already did, and I'm just going to add a little bit of glue. Here it is on the back side. So this is just a glue that dries completely clear. Add just a little bit of dots right in the center, right where the body is. I like to do that specifically because when I place my piece down, I like it to have a little bit of movement if I could. So you can see like these pieces will kind of flap a little bit. You can see how I've done that on the original piece here. So this card here is pretty much done, just done almost the exact same thing, but how simple, quick, and easy that was to finish these cards. There's a lot of different techniques in that, but simple and easy. So I'm now going to show you a different one. So I'm going to just take all these aside here. And the next one that I'm going to show you is this one here, which is America the Beautiful. And this has got a couple of techniques in it as well. So the first one that I'm going to have is also a die cutting. So we're going to use the machine again. And I'm going to take this. So this is our card base for later. And we've already pre-cut these. So these are just going to be, now this card here was made on a blue background, but we're going to actually add it to a white background today. And I'm going to just hold these down just like that. Bring over my machine. Okay. This time for the machine, I need the base to be complete. Last time I had the base open. Now I want the base to be complete. I'm going to place this one here. You can see it has lots of different cuts in it. This is my cutting surface, so I'm always going to cut into this one. So if you have one of these machines, it's always best to cut into one and then have one has no cuts in it at all, because then you know which one is supposed to get cut into, and if you have any delicates, this won't mark up your paper at all, which is kind of cool. So I've got this. Now I did not adhere this at all to each other. I'm just going to place that down just like that. And then I am going to take my die. This is a die. It's a nice thin steel ruled die. And I'm going to just place that just like so on the top. And I just got it kind of like off to the side, but also a little wonky there, if you want to call it that. And then I use the one on the top. Place this right on top. As long as you've got the sandwich down there, you can go ahead and roll that through. And it will cut through both of the pieces. So I'm going to go backwards. I always like to end where I started for some reason. Sometimes you have to go, if you have one that is really intricate, you have to use a different, more pressure, but this one here is nice and open, so you don't need to use all that pressure. So I have now put my pieces aside here. And I have here the 2 stars that popped out, which I actually can use on a different project, not going to be used today. And then I have these ones here, which fit together, and this is going to be my beginning, my top of my piece. So here again is my card, and so there's the top of my piece here, okay? So I also, oops, I need one more of these. I can cut that out super simply. And that is just done with this. So I have one for now, but it would be using the same pattern and sandwich that we used. We would cut out a second one if we needed it. So I'll put that aside for now. And I also have this piece of red. This is actually red vellum, which is kind of unique because it's got a little bit, it's a little see-through. Let's see if I can show you there. It's a little see-through, and but it's nice and flexible, and it's vellum paper is just really nice to work with. It's got a nice texture to it. So we are going to use a little bit of a powder. This has like cornstarch and baby powder in it, and this is actually just tapped right on, and this is going to hold the embossing powder. Now I didn't need it in the other one because I covered the entire piece, but in this one I don't want all that overspray everywhere, so I just went ahead and tapped that right on. I have my stamp. I can find that real quick here. Here it is. I knew I'd find it. And my ink pad. The same ink pad that we used before, but this time we're using it with a stamp. Now if you want, you can measure to make sure that you get it in the right spot. You could put something like that so that you know. I'm not putting it together yet, but just so I know where it's supposed to go. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take my America the Beautiful, ink this up, and then I'm going to go right ahead and stamp that right on. Now when I stamp it, you might see a small, and I'm giving a nice good pressure, you might see a very faint image of that. Now I don't need that anymore at the moment, but you can see maybe just a faint image of that showing up. I'm not sure there. And so I'm also going to go ahead, use the embossing powder. So we're using embossing powder again. This one here has a little bit of glitter in it, so perfect for some kind of a Memorial Day or July 4th, Veterans Day, even for a card for someone coming home or whatnot. It's perfect for somebody in the military, it'd be a perfect card. I'm going to throw that back in. You can see I hardly used any. There's really very little bit that I've used. If you have any overspray, I don't know if you can see, there's just a little bit of pieces there that are kind of not really supposed to be there. You can sometimes tap it off. If it gets really bad, which this isn't, you can take a brush, a paintbrush, and you can kind of brush around it and make sure that there's no overspray. In this particular case, it's vellum. It's going to heat up and it's going to melt really quickly. And I'm also going to do it from the bottom, because doing this from the bottom is going to keep all of those particles here right where they're supposed to be on the stamp. I could go directly on the top of this, but in this particular case, I like to do it. It's so thin, it's going to go right through. I like to do it on the thin paper right from the bottom. So I'm going to hold this steady, see if I can show you that at the same time. Oh, see, it's already going. It's already, see, it's so thin. We're almost done with the whole project here, all that. See, all done. You can do a little top piece there if you need, but how quick that was because the paper is just so thin. So, all right, we are going to also, I also need to do some coloring on there, and we need to show you how to use the ribbon or how to add the ribbon on. So the ribbon is actually going to go on just the blue sparkle piece here, or the blue stars. We're going to add here the ribbon to one side. I'm going to flip that over. Just add a little bit of adhesive to the back side just so I have some place to anchor it while I'm working. And then here, what you're going to do is you're going to pull that, and I have some glue dots here. Let me see. I don't have my glue dots. Yeah, there they are. I knew they were here. So we're going to add our glue dots, and I'm just going to add one right here. And you can see, I don't know if you can see this, they're tiny. They're itty bitty little dots. Can you see that? So they're tiny, tiny little dots. So I've added just one to the back side of the ribbon here, and I'm going to pull that nice and tight, push that down, and then I'm going to grab another one here. I can actually grab it with my finger and I'm going to put that right on top of the ribbon here. And that's going to allow me to pull that ribbon backwards to do a nice little loop. See how that worked? Isn't that cool? And then you just continue along. So however many loops you wanted to do, it's just a cool little technique. You push that one down, and you can make the loops loopy, or you can pull them tight depending on what you want. We're going to do another one here, another little loop. And I think in this original card we did 3 loops, so I think we can get another one in there. One more. Push that right down there. There we go, and one more loop, and we'll pull that around. Now when you're finishing off the loop, put that on top there. When you're finishing off the loop, you need to just anchor it on this side before you pull it around. Otherwise, it will just kind of lay flat and it won't look like a loop. So we're just going to push that right there, pull that to make the loop. And you can see I've made 3 little loops. Maybe not perfect, but you can see what they look like from there. And then we'll pull that around, put a little bit more adhesive on the back side, and then flatten that. Now, for this, I'm just going to leave this here for today, and we have that perfect, just like that. This is now going to get adhered onto here. So I have just a little bit more adhesive on these corners here. And this is on the back side of that same paper that you made the loops on. And we're going to just match that right up. Maybe I'm going to have to put that loop right down, make sure that's down so it matches right up. You can see how it just matched. I have a little piece hanging off. I'm just going to flip it around. There you go. You can see how I've just matched that right up. And now, before I put it onto my card base, which is right here as well, I also need to make sure that this matches in here where I want it to. So because I know that you don't know where this is going to lay, so don't put any adhesive on this piece, but put adhesive on this piece, because in the end it won't matter, because if there's any extra pieces on this that you do see, it's going to go onto the card base, so it won't make any difference whatsoever. So I'm just going to put a little bit of adhesive on the back side of this star. It's going to not only hold the red piece of vellum, but it's also going to hold the star top to the card at the end. And now I can match up my America the Beautiful. So let's see if I can get that right on there where I want it. You can see, just match that right up. Perfect. Maybe a little bit off to the side, but I like it. And then if you don't have any showing, so see, I've covered most of that now, so now I will have to go ahead and add just a little bit. But don't go over the area where the vellum is, otherwise you will see the adhesive. So just go over the area where the star is. I don't know if you can see that because it's a little bit of a shadow there, but you can go ahead just where the base is, but don't go over just the vellum, otherwise you'll see that. So we're going to go ahead and adhere that right on, and then we'll add on our little bit of embellishments, which we have today, the star. Okay, and in our star here, all I did was I just inked it up and then I embossed it with the embossing powder like we did to this into our first piece. And then but for this particular one, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to adhere that on. If you don't have embossing powder and you wanted it sparkly, you could certainly add some glue and some glitter to it. You could also add like a wink of Stella or some type of a glitter marker. And this particular one here, it looks like it's pop dotted on. So I'm just going to add that on here as well. I got some pop dots. Pop dots look like this. They're just little dimensional foam pieces. And these ones are just tiny, which is great for projects like this. I'm going to flip that over and put that on the back side. Pull off the other side and go ahead and adhere that right on down. You can see, simple and easy, all done there. So we have one more card for you. So this one here is using a totally different technique as well. This is alcohol based. So we are going to be using plastic paper. So this paper is really cool. It is plastic. It looks a little like stucco, I think, this one, or maybe like drywall or ceiling tile or whatnot, but it's plastic, completely plastic, which is great because the alcohol won't stick to, well, the alcohol will stick to this. If you put it onto a porous surface, it'll soak right in, and you wouldn't want that to happen. So we need some type of an applicator. So I have a little bit of a tool here with some felt and some Velcro to hold the felt on. And now I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to open some jars of alcohol. This is alcohol ink, and this is a caramel color. I'm going to add a couple of dollops there. Now you always want to make sure that you're adding gently to it like this. Otherwise, if you put, just turn it over, you could splish splash all over. So just a little bit almost to the felt and then give it a little press. And I'm adding a different color, and I always add a couple of colors. I think I might have added 3 colors to this one. So we're going to go with, this is terracotta. And again, now a little bit here, a little bit there, and a little bit there. It doesn't matter. You can go over each other, but you don't have to. You can go next to each other, and they're all going to blend nicely. And what color is this? Oh, rust. This is a good color. Let's see if I can get this open here. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to tap a couple, so maybe 3 of those as well. Okay? So now close those up because I don't want them spilling all over my spot. And now I'm going to just take my piece, and I've got the alcohol on top here, and I'm going to pounce. And just pouncing the color, slightly different color than the last one that I did, but that's the beauty of art, always making it your own. You can see all the beautiful texture that kind of comes out. And the more I go over a spot, which is really cool, the more dots that you can see come out on here. If this is nice and juicy wet, you can actually keep going. If you don't like it as dark as it is, you can add a little bit of blending solution or alcohol to it, and you'll get some nice, beautiful lightness to it as well. You can see all these nice speckles. If you don't like the speckles, you can keep going over it until you get some different colors. As long as this is nice and wet and juicy, you'll continue to add color onto it. If it's not wet and juicy, then it's not gonna have any more color. So here we've finished this one here. As you can see, this is pretty much completed. We'll give it a little press or a little spray, a little blow just to get it to dry, because it does take a few moments because it's a non-porous surface. You're adding an alcohol to a non-porous. So in this particular one here, we are going to finish this card up with a little bit of adhesive on the back. And again, this is plastic paper, but it's still paper, so it's still gonna hold onto the adhesive. Place that right onto our card base. I always like to add a card base there. Place that right in the middle. And then I have my actual card. And again, I always do the back side of the piece that I'm working on, because you never know if it's smaller or bigger than the piece that you're going to be putting it onto. So I'm going to place that right onto here. And we are going to take some twine and wrap this around. And a couple times here. Just wrap that around. And then what I did was I also added onto here a little embellishment. So this looks like a little nautical medallion of some type. Place it right in, place where I want. I'm gonna get some scissors and just cut that and then tie that off. And you can see, if you don't want it to move, you're gonna have to go back into the medallion to make sure that it stays where it's supposed to be. So that does happen sometimes too. When you get one that has an open eye like that, you have to kind of maneuver it back through just to make sure that they all stay. So now I'm gonna have to wrap that up, see? And I have some extra little pieces hanging off, and here I would give these little snips. And I'm gonna add on just one more piece to this. This could be for anything, but in this particular case, I have a little die here. It's called All of the Best, and it's done out of the base paper with the machine. So let me just finish that off with this here and the base. Make sure you use your cutting plate, my paper, and my All the Best. And actually, I think I'm gonna not use this one. I'm gonna use the one that has a lot more pressure, because it just gives it a little bit more to push on there. So this has just a little bit more pressure. And so I'm only gonna be able to, I'm not gonna have anything that needs to go through on that particular one. It just needs to go through that once, and all the pieces will pop out. See, kind of just fell right off in there, see? Which is kind of cool. So you have All the Best. You pop out anything extra that's sitting there. And in this particular one, to embellish it here, I used just a little bit of glitter on top. And I used that just a little bit, and then I press it on with my finger just to make it a little unique looking. So it has a little bit of a glitter tone to it, as much or as little as you want. I would add maybe a little bit more here. All right, and then on the back side, we're gonna add a little bit of the adhesive, just this glue adhesive, and put this right on top. And here you go. In 30 minutes, you have finished 3 cards. All set. I hope you have enjoyed these 3 cards this month, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Crafting with Kim. I hope you enjoy the techniques using embossing folders, embossing inks, stamps, colored pigments, and even alcohol inks. If you have any ideas or suggestions for a future episode, please contact me at keptcreations@gmail.com. Until next time, keep it crafty.